And we're live for the first episode of the Frugal Health Podcast. And I'm thrilled to have Loren Lockman, one of the greatest fasting supervisors and specialists, not just in fasting, but in natural hygiene and in a frugivore diet. So I could talk a lot about him, but I'll let him do the presentation. So, Loren, I'm glad to see you again after like a year, right? And I'm thrilled also for the results that I got from a 39-day water fast with you there. I admire your work. I admire Tanglewood. It's pretty beautiful. So, talk a little bit more about fasting, right? Because I think we don't have too much time, so we cannot go through too much stories, but people probably are avid for knowledge. So why fasting can actually help people?
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, I realize, first of all, that for most people, it seems like a very radical concept coming into it. I think the critically important part to understand is that healing is a biological process. So while there's many things that we can do and many things that treatments people can get, only the body can heal the body. What makes fasting so powerful is that fasting done properly is the best way for us to get out of the body's way so that it can cleanse and heal itself. When that happens, amazing things occur. And you experienced that yourself and saw it in many other people. And so it doesn't matter really what's going on. If there's something that the body can heal, it's almost always going to heal it much more efficiently and much more effectively via fasting long enough and properly.
So you have been doing this for 30 years, right?
27 and a half years we've been open. I started fasting myself about 35 years ago.
35, nice. And you are also frugivore for 35 years. Just so people understand that, that we can actually live off a raw food diet and do long water fasts. And, because there was this recent case, I don't know if you saw it, a woman died. So people are not, I just mean like we can be models to show people that if you do it properly, you're not going to have any issue. You're actually going to be healthier.
That's right. Yeah. I've been living on a frugivorous diet. And for anyone that's not clear, that means a diet of fruit and leafy greens for 31 and a half years. And haven't been sick a day, have experienced amazing health. My body actually works better now at 62 than it did at 18. And so, and I've worked with more than 10,000 clients. So what I see across the board is amazing improvements in how we feel, how we function. Virtually every aspect of our health and our being is improved when we get the garbage out of the body via fasting and keep it out by eating the diet that our bodies were meant for.
So what motivated you actually to make this change, right? Because it's people think it's too hard and things like that. What motivated you back then?
I had gotten very sick at 23. I graduated from school. Within about 6 months, was sicker than anybody I knew. Later diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic sinusitis, systemic candida, and 57 allergies. And so my body didn't work very well. I would go to work, but I actually bought a house about half a mile from my office so I could wake up at 8:30 and be in the office by 9 o'clock. I would sleep for an hour in my car at lunch, and I would go home by 6 o'clock and go back to sleep. I was exhausted most of the time. And I got worse with 3 years of medicine, finally gave up on that, realized that it wasn't helping me. It was only suppressing symptoms, and that I needed to find another way. And so I looked around. I wound up discovering that every species fasted when sick enough or badly enough injured. This is nature's way of allowing the organism to heal itself. And so I decided, okay, I need to try this. And honestly, I didn't really know. I mean, my primary mentor was a guy who'd been dead for years. I was looking at a book, and I didn't really know if people could go weeks without food. So I started with 2 days, and then I did 4 days, and then I worked my way up until I was doing 21 days at a time. And amazing things happened, as you know.
Nice, nice. So, and then you decided to help people out, being coaching them to help through a frugivore's diet and fasting, right?
That's right. What happened was the change in me was so profound, and I wanted to find a way to help other people. And so I looked around and I noticed that most of the fasting centers that existed at the time, and there were more then than there are now, most of them were very medical feeling, very institutional. They were unnatural settings that I wouldn't want to spend time in. And I thought, I can do better. I can create a place where people can get amazing results. And in fact, I had decided, and this happened by accident. The change in me was so profound. I went from being so ill to being so vibrant that people started coming up to me saying, "Oh my God, you look amazing. Can you help me? Or can you help my spouse? Or can you help my child or my partner, my parent?" And so I started coaching people for free while running a real estate business. And it felt so good to help people that about 5 years into it, I thought, you know what? I'm going to close the real estate business, which was lucrative, and do something which will probably be less financially remunerative, but I think will be better for humanity. And so the people I was coaching about diet and exercise and health in general, they knew that I was fasting, and they started asking me to guide them through the process. And that's what happened. I started guiding other people because they pleaded with me. They begged me to guide them through it.
And after like so long, Tanglewood nowadays is like the only fasting center that I know that have like not only a natural setting, but also follows refeed people on a frugivore diet, right, in the world.
It's the only one that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Nice, nice, yeah. That I admire you as well, because most people talk about hygiene and don't understand the hygienic diet, right? Like, but so tell me one thing that probably people would love to hear. What was the most impressive fasting case that you had? And afterwards, talk a little bit also, if that's not the case, about the man you fasted for 4 months with testicular cancer, I think.
Yes, he had testicular cancer. He fasted for 18 and a half weeks, 4.5 months. When he was done, there was no trace of cancer. Now, this sounds radical.
He was obese.
He was obese. Yeah. You or I probably wouldn't survive 18 and a half weeks without food. But, this is the piece that I think people fail to understand, is that we store fat on the body, and you and I are both lean, but both have body fat, because 2.5% body fat is considered essential fat, and we can't survive without it. So everyone's got some fat, and even people who are very lean can fast, usually for at least 21 days. I'm currently fasting for the fourth time. A naturopathic doctor who came to me at 170 centimeters and 38 or 39 kilos. Yeah. She did perfectly fine, got her health back, and has not since come back for the third time, because each time she sees amazing benefits. Now, to be honest, part of what's happened is that she's gone back and made less than optimal choices, and so feels the need to recover again. But the most impressive story, that's a tough one. Having taken more than 10,000 people through this process, I've seen so many things that medicine or science would call miracles, things that aren't supposed to happen, that we see happening all the time. probably the most miraculous maybe would be the woman who was in a car accident 6.5 years ago and paralyzed from here down. She is considered a quadriplegic because although she can move her arms and hands, she can't control her hands anymore. She can't use them the way that you and I do. She fasted with me 2 years ago. I want to say for 26 or 28 days. And at the end of it, she was having bowel movements for the first time without using some sort of stimulation. I mean, up until then, she needed an enema, she needed an herbal, something, because her body didn't work anymore. She began feeling her spine for the first time in more than 4 years. And she began being able to control her hands so she could actually use her hands the way that we do for the first time in 4 years. Now, medicine says, science around this says, after 2 years, 2 years after being paralyzed, if you haven't healed, there is zero chance of healing. But we saw her shift in dramatic ways. So this is emblematic of the kinds of changes that are possible. In fact, I'm told all the time, my doctor, or the doctors say this issue, whatever the issue is, can't heal. And I say, yeah, but we see this heal all the time. I mean, some obvious examples you probably witnessed while you were there. Type 2 diabetes. Medicine says you're on drugs for the rest of your life. We have 100% success of healing that. And honestly, that's not even that difficult. In most cases, people can just lose the excess weight. But medicine says that you're going to be on drugs for the rest of your life because that's how they make their money, selling drugs. The whole system is rigged, as you well know. Hypertension, another one. Most people over the age of 55 or even 50 have high blood pressure. They're told they're going to be on medication for the rest of their life. We see 100% success eliminating it.
And so after the fast, what are the things that people must be aware of, for example?
Well, there are many things, I suppose. One of those things is to understand that as the body is cleaning out the old hard material. Now, let me stop for a second because this is considered a controversial subject. Doctors are taught that there is no old waste in the system, right? But we see virtually every client eliminating pounds and pounds, kilos and kilos of old hard material. And unless fasting produces this old material, it allows us to eliminate stuff that's been collecting our whole life. In some cases, we have a woman who just left us on Saturday. She spent 9 weeks with us. She was going to do 42 days, made it to 35 instead. She did 4 weeks of refeeding. And the last 2 weeks or so, eliminated an average of 8 or 9 times per day, having 4 meals per day. And these are large, hard, in some cases, painful bowel movements. And this went on every day for weeks. I've actually had clients, I had one guy for 4.5 months, had between 6 and 17 bowel movements every day after completing his fast. So as we're hydrating this stuff to get rid of it, we start reabsorbing toxins into the bloodstream. And that's okay. And there's nothing we can do about that. But while that's happening, we're going to have cravings for whatever's in that food. So people find themselves craving the stuff that they used to eat in the past. Stuff they maybe haven't eaten for years, they're wanting to eat all of a sudden. And this happens because we're rehydrating this old waste. That's one of the things to look out for. If you're not aware of that, you might think, well, maybe my body needs that stuff. No, it definitely doesn't.
So, but I meant also like most people make mistakes after the fast of eating like bad stuff. So, what would be like, because refeeding syndrome is actually a thing, right? So, like, what would you suggest for them, like, to understand that? For example, I think supervision makes a lot of difference. Makes a lot of, because also at home, most people, it's not like you and me. We can manage to maintain a frugivore diet with easiness. Most people have a hard time. So, what would you say to that, right?
Well, I mean, again, I think this really hits the issue because there's going to be cravings for all kinds of things, and so it's important to understand that first of all, it will take up to 6 weeks after completing the fast for your body to finish the process of getting the garbage out of the arteries, of getting the garbage out of the colon. Because it goes from the small intestine where it typically is stuck into the large intestine, but often won't move because it's still hard and dry enough until we've had enough time to get it well hydrated and get it out. So it's critically important that one eat optimally. I mean, ideally, for the rest of their life to continue feeling and functioning as well as possible, but certainly for at least 6 weeks so that their body can finish the process. It's only then that one actually even knows what they've accomplished. But I agree with you completely. Having supervision is critically important. I think every client we've ever seen who's done it on their own as well as with supervision tells us the same thing. It was much more beneficial and usually much easier in the protected environment of Tanglewood than it is when they're at home on their own.
One of the things that I noticed there, I have fasted many times, right? So, and only once in a hygienic facility. And one of the things that I noticed, it was much, because I have pre. It's easy for me to control my diet, but I think the hardest part on fasting for me when I do at home by myself is that the motivation to continue. You have your refrigerator over there with food, or you can buy food pretty easy. You don't have the company of other people that are doing the same process.
Exactly.
You go outside of your home, so that it's actually made it a lot easier to maintain myself in a good path, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, you're in a protected environment at Tanglewood. You're in a community of like-minded people going through the same thing. We're actually entirely set up to guide people through this process. So the whole system, the whole facility is intended to support you, to nurture you, to hold you so that it's easy to get through the process.
And another question that most people have about fasting is that it's quite funny and quite like it's not controversial, I would say. It goes out of the normal common sense, right? Because most people think like, I'm too thin, I cannot gain weight, so I cannot fast, so I should eat more and more and more. And I know that I learned that with Shelton in his books back then, that actually it's the opposite. Could you talk a little bit more about your experience in fasting? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have this woman with us right now who came to us, excuse me, at 170, and it was 38 or 39 kilos the first time. And here was somebody who wasn't able to gain weight, and we see this all the time, and fasted and then was able to gain weight. In fact, I happened to be visiting her city in the US. She lived in San Diego at the time, uh, maybe 4 months after she left us. And so she gave me a tour of the naturopathic hospital where she worked at the time, introduced me to everybody as the guy who healed her. I didn't heal her. I just guided her through the process, and her body did all the hard work. But she weighed more 4 months after leaving us than she did when she arrived. And that's after losing all the weight that one loses with fasting. So she was finally, for the first time in years, able to put weight back on. We had a guy who came to us just 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago now, who was 182 and I want to say 46 kilos. Again, very lean for a guy, right? He only fasted 16 days because I told him he had to stop at that point. There wasn't any more reserves. But this is a guy who for 5 years had been losing weight every single day, no matter what he did. He tried eating everything. He tried, changing sleep and exercise. It didn't matter what he did. He couldn't gain weight. He wasn't absorbing anything he was eating. He fasted for 16 days. He spent another 7.5 weeks at Tanglewood, did the whole 10-week session. When he left us, he weighed more than when he arrived. And that was, again, after losing the weight that one loses with fasting. And that was the first time he'd been able to gain weight for 5 years after fasting. So what happens for most people is they've got all this toxic garbage in there, and they're not digesting, absorbing, or assimilating very well. I don't know which, could be any of those things. I mean, we can't assimilate what we don't absorb. We can't absorb what we don't digest, right? So this process allowed his body to begin functioning properly again, to be able to absorb the nutrients from his food. And we see this over and over again. We actually fast probably 24 underweight, very underweight people every year. Now, it's not for everybody. I mean, there are people who really are too lean to fast, but not very many.
Nice, nice. And so, besides diabetes, hypertension, and cancer, what else have you seen being reversed, and even paraplegia, right? Disease of the nerves. What else have you seen fasting being effective for?
Well, we've seen fasting effective with virtually everything. I mean, again, I think it's important to understand something most people don't understand. Our bodies are intended to heal, right? Healing is a biological process. When we give the body the optimal conditions, it's amazing what happens. And there are very few conditions that can't heal. So we see arthritis healing. And I had a client who came to me, 24 years of pain medication for arthritis. He fasted for 26 days and has been pain-free ever since. That was 6 years ago. No pain, no medications for the first time. We see virtually everything. I mean, almost any condition you could name, we've probably worked with people with that condition. And we tend to see significant benefits with almost everything. I mentioned cancer earlier. You mentioned the guy who fasted 4.5 months. We see people with cancer all the time. And, while healing cancer through fasting sounds crazy to most people, keep in mind that science says that there are cancer cells forming in each body every day. When the immune function is healthy enough, it destroys those cancer cells as they form. And so the idea that we can regain the ability to destroy cancer, that shouldn't be so surprising. Most people's bodies simply don't work very well because they're toxic, they're dehydrated, they're out of balance. And what fasting does is it allows us to begin to change all three of those things. We get the body hydrated again, or start to. We get the garbage out of the body so it can function properly, and we rebalance the system. And when that happens, we see amazing things shift. So we have seen people heal from multiple sclerosis. We have seen people heal from thyroid conditions. We have seen many people healing from depression and other, emotional and psychological issues. Now, I should hasten to say, we're not a hospital that's set up to deal with severe mental illness. So we can't take people dealing with, schizophrenia and severe issues.
But you still think would be ideal for them to fast, right?
Absolutely would. It's just that we would need a whole nother staff dedicated to those people, and we're not really set up to do that.
Yeah. It's impressive. So autoimmune diseases, neurological diseases, psychological diseases,
Absolutely.
metabolic diseases.
Absolutely. Every time. It's incredible what happens.
And where do you see the importance of the frugivore diet after the fast and the whole natural hygiene lifestyle, right? Because most people that come to me, like, because I'm the main person speaking about hygienic fasting in Brazil, they just see the fasting part, right? They just want to get healed, but they don't understand that they must maintain that healing after the fast and for the whole lives, or else they will need fast and fast and fast.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think it's critically important to understand that we create almost every disease with our lifestyle choices, diet being the number one factor. And so, again, the diet sounds crazy to most people, Ed. Most people have grown up eating a very different diet than the one that you and I both recognize as being optimal for the body. But I think it's, again, if we just take a step back for a second, okay, if we came to the planet as aliens and we looked around, we would notice that there were roughly 25 million animal species, and that every one of them has one species specific diet for every member of that species. I just got a message yesterday from a woman who said, because we were talking about her fasting with me and what would happen during the refeeding process. She wanted to know what she would eat. And she said, I've tried everything. I don't do well on a vegan diet. Right. And so I'm pointing out to her, right, but your digestive tract is exactly the same as mine. We're not different species. We're all made for the same diet. And while that's not a popular opinion, many people would say, no, we're individuals. It's going to vary from person to person. My experience now with 27 and a half years of guiding thousands of people through these fasts is that when we get the body clean enough, this same diet works perfectly for every single person. The key is we have to get the garbage out first. Many people try to eat an optimal diet if they've ever tried, and they may not feel very well because it allows the body to begin detoxifying. And that can go on for 20 plus years. We can accomplish in 4 weeks' time what people can't accomplish in 20 years eating optimally. And once we've got most of the garbage out, now the body is going to feel and function amazingly well. And in fact, once we've done the fast, the body becomes even more sensitive. So if we eat something that really doesn't belong in the body, our bodies are going to tell us quickly and powerfully. That's not ideal.
Nice, nice. I see that's one of the biggest mistakes, right? Just rely on fasting, but they don't study hygiene to apply afterwards, and yeah. And also tell me your daily fare in the diet, for example. What would you eat in a day for people to understand what we're talking about?
Sure, I can use the last couple days as an example. I'm currently on Cape Cod with my family. I'm here with my girlfriend and her son. Yesterday, I had nectarines for breakfast at two o'clock in the afternoon, roughly. When I finished my,
It's like lunch, but breakfast, right?
that's right. It's my first meal of the day. It usually occurs somewhere between 2 and 3 in the afternoon every day. I had my second meal. It was a little later than usual. I think last night at around 6:30, something like that. And it's usually between 6 and 7. And it's a simple salad: lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers, some avocado. Here we're getting fresh corn right now, and just picked and cut off the cob and raw into the salad. Delicious. If you've never, those of you listening, if you've never tried fresh corn, raw corn, amazing. If it's fresh, but it has to be fresh. That's typical. The day before, it was watermelon and then a simple salad for my second meal. And it's pretty much the same every day. There's usually one fruit meal when I'm on my own. I'll have 2 fruit meals about 4 days a week and a salad maybe 3 times a week. When I'm with my partner, she prepares a salad for both of us, and I'm pretty easygoing, so no problem. I'll have a salad almost every night.
Nice. And just so people get a picture out of it, how much would be the amount for lunch and how much would be the amount for dinner?
Right.
Yeah,
Well, that
because you
sounds
said mono, like a mono meal for lunch, right? And so people
right.
understand like nectarines, they probably will think about like 2 pieces or 3 pieces of fruit.
Right. No, I ate, I think, 10 nectarines. I think it was 9 or 10, something like that. A nectarine is going to have about 45, 50 calories. So we can probably estimate that being about 450 calories for the meal. The salad is going to be a pretty big bowl. Again, it might be a head of lettuce, a couple of cucumbers, um, 1 or 2 medium-sized tomatoes, or a large handful of cherry tomatoes, and 1 avocado. That's a typical salad for me. If I'm eating a watermelon, I'll usually buy the round watermelons, the same ones we serve at Tanglewood, and I'll eat that whole thing, 2.5, 3 kilos at a time. And that sounds like a lot of food to people, but watermelon contains 17 calories per 100 grams. So 2 kilos of watermelon is 340 calories. It's not very much. It's mostly water. My typical daily diet is only about 1,000, maybe 1,200 calories on some days. And again, that sounds crazy. I'm 6 feet, 182 centimeters, 70 kilos, and people would say, no, you can't maintain that on 1,000 calories a day. But I do, and I have now for 30 years. And the key is we need to make the body much more efficient. Many people eating the same diet that we recommend, are still eating far more calories, but that's because they haven't done the work yet to get the body clean and efficient. Once we do that, we literally need far less food because the body becomes so much more efficient.
I noticed that as well. Over the years, I ended up eating less than I ate back then when
Right.
I made the switch.
Yeah, absolutely. It happens for almost everybody over time if they allow it to. And it's a big mistake to not allow it to happen. One of the things that happens is, when we eat more calories than we need, there are only 2 possibilities. One of them is that we store the excess as fat. And that's what happens to many people as they age. The second one is that if the body is able to, it will speed up metabolism so that we burn off the extra calories. Now, a lot of people think that's a good thing. I mean, just this morning, while responding to some emails between calls, I heard a video, woman was talking about this is how we can increase our metabolism. And that's what everyone talks about. But I don't think we want to increase our metabolism. That means we're less efficient beings. It literally means if we doubled our metabolism, it would mean that we would need twice as many calories to do the same amount of work. We would have to eat twice as much food to do the same amount of work. And the only thing that longevity experts all agree on is that we don't want to eat any more than necessary. The less we eat, the longer we live. So fasting, therapeutic fasting, and for me, it's been many times. I've fasted like 3.5 years of my life cumulatively. But therapeutic fasting allows the body to become much more efficient. And what that means is we need less food. We put less energy into processing food than ever before.
Yes. And top 5 favorite fruits.
Well, that's a tough one because there's so many. Um, Watermelon has to be there, and durian has to be there. From there, I guess I would have to add mangoes and papayas. And the last one's going to be a tough one. Rollinia is amazing. I love Cuban bananas, red bananas. Um, but there are so many fruits. As I think you're aware, we've got more than 200 varieties of fruit growing at Tanglewood. And many of these trees aren't producing much yet because they're only 3 to 5 years old. It takes most trees 5 to 6 years to begin producing. So we're not producing everything yet. But I mean, when I'm in the U.S. right now, and I've been eating cherries and grapes, and let's see, lots of watermelons, nectarines, and peaches. They're incredible, right? A good nectarine is pretty hard to beat, but there's so many. It was if you gave if you gave me like my top 25, that would be easier.
And give people at home an idea to they tried everything from the allopathic medicine to the naturopathic and the natural medicine uh, way of producing health, right? And they got interested in hygiene. They understand that lifestyle medicine is actually the thing for them. So what would you suggest for them, like they want to start fasting, they want to start frugivore diet, through what
Right.
ways what tips would you give them?
Well, um, I guess the first tip would be to get really clear about what you're committed to. Because the truth is that getting from eating conventionally to feeling and functioning as well as possible is going to involve detoxification. And that's not going to feel very comfortable sometimes. So we need to be really clear about what we're committed to. For me, it's always been about maximizing my potential, becoming the best version of myself possible so that I'm able to do everything that I'm theoretically capable of doing. And I believe that most people fall far short. I believe everyone has some degree of genius in them in some area. Most people don't even know what that is because they've never come close to manifesting that. We can't create everything we're capable of if we don't have the energy that we and vitality that we could have. And so I think the first starting point is get really clear about what you're committed to. If you want to feel and function as well as you can, it's a lot easier to make the choices you need to make when things are a little bit challenging sometimes. Okay. The second tip I would say is most people are seriously dehydrated and would benefit from sipping more water. As you know, sipping is important, but I would say for most people, it's going to be between 3 and 4 liters a day. Okay, far more than most people currently drink. The other thing that would be beneficial for people would be to start letting go of those substances that are detrimental to them. So, alcohol, tobacco, um, processed foods, salt, sugar, oil. These things really don't have a place in a healthy diet. And I mean, there's no such thing as healthy oils. Some may be better than others, but we're not meant to eat 100% fat extracted from any substance. Right? We can get our natural fats and proteins. And maybe this is an important tip too, to realize that we are actually meant. I mean, you hear today about people living on low carbohydrate diets. But the simple fact is that we're meant to eat carbohydrates. Our bodies run on sugar and they prefer sugar. Yes, we can run on ketones, right, from fat metabolism. But the fact is, when we stop eating, the body's looking for sugar. It's not looking for fat. It's got plenty of fat and it's still looking for ways to get its sugar needs met. So we want to understand that we need tiny amounts of protein and tiny amounts of fat. And we can easily get those needs met because there is some small amount of fat and protein in everything, in watermelon, in papaya, in mangoes, in apples and oranges, and grapes and strawberries. And every single living cell contains both fat and protein. So remember that we need tiny amounts of those things and start to reduce your intake of these two macronutrients.
Nice, nice. And one last tip for fast: if they want to do a fast, what they should be looking for? How do they find you? How do they find Tanglewood? And one tip to start looking for, supervised water fast.
Right. Well, I mean, the first thing I would say is if you're looking for supervision, it's important that you are supervised by somebody who has a lot of experience because understanding what's going on requires, I mean, knowledge is born from experience. And so today anyone can say, well, I supervise fasts. I had a guy recently who said, I can't afford to come to you, but I found a hygienist who won't charge me anything. Well, does this person have any experience supervising fast? Because calling yourself a hygienist isn't very difficult. He wound up having pretty terrible results and getting into trouble because he was being guided by someone who didn't really understand the process very well. So I would say you want to make sure you have someone who has a lot of experience. This process is a natural process. It's a lot like giving birth in that very few women would be willing to go off into the woods by themselves to birth their baby. It's probably not very wise. Most of us don't have a lot of experience with birthing babies. And so it's probably better to have a doula, someone who is practiced with this. And the same is true with fasting. It's a natural process. But how does the average person know how much water to drink when they're walking around severely dehydrated every day? We measure that, right? We're looking at several different measurements to see whether they're getting the water they need or not. How does the average person understand what various symptoms mean and whether it means they should stop or continue? And so it's really important to have experienced guidance. And if you want to find me, it's easy. Tanglewwod is going to be the best way to find us. If you go to the Tanglewwod Wellness Center website, you'll find all the information you need. There's a button there that says contact us. If you've got questions, you can send a message right from our website that I'll respond to personally. And if you're interested in fasting, you can complete the application on the homepage, which gives us your health history. And once I read that, again, I'll respond usually within 24 hours in most cases, depending on how busy I am. And I'll respond to that and give you a recommendation for what you need to do based on your specific set of circumstances and what you might expect from that.
Nice, nice. And you guys are open the whole year, like a 3 months, two for 2 months, and then you close, and 2 months, and then you close, right?
Yeah, we're typically open for about 10 weeks at a time, although we sometimes have sessions that are a little different than that. We had a 6 week session, 9 week session, but most of our sessions are 10 weeks. We usually have breaks of 3 to 5 weeks between the sessions that give us a chance to breathe, do any necessary repairs, and just have a little bit of a break.
And people will stay there, have a water fast. When they break the fast, they are fed fruits and vegetables in a nice setting. You have a pool, and then they go home, and then they go back home, right? So the people understand a little bit more of the process for the last question.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the process involves both the fast itself, and the average fast at Tanglewood is 26 days. We book people by the week. So we have people every year who come and spend 1 week with us and fast for 5 days. In fact, I just fasted a guy for the second time. His first visit was 1 week. The last one was 2 weeks. He's now sending his wife for 4 weeks and will be coming for 4 weeks himself. But he was a little bit nervous about starting with that long. It's been amazing for him each time, and now he's convinced that his wife, who actually has some health challenges, needs to come and spend more time with us. So a 4 week stay is 21 days fasting and 7 days refeeding. A 5 week stay is 26 days fasting and 9 days refeeding. When they leave, they get a written document that reminds them, because they've learned through daily lectures what belongs and what doesn't belong. But this document reminds them what belongs in the body in relative, what relative quantities they should be consuming. Ideally, we're getting people to the point that they can actually listen to their body, eat when they're hungry, stop when they're satisfied, and then repeat as necessary through the day.
So, any other things that I can edit that in the end. Any other like topics we can talk about in fasting and to natural hygiene and healing and a diet itself that you think it's interesting? And one more thing, guys, if you haven't watched the documentary that me and Lockman did of my 39-day water fast and stay in Tanglewood, it's a must watch. The English version is in Tanglewood's channel on YouTube, and the Portuguese version is actually my YouTube channel in Portuguese. So it's a must watch. If you haven't, it's the 1 hour and a half more well invested in your whole life. So tell me more a little bit about fasting then. So what would be a contraindication for fasting? Who shouldn't fast?
Well, honestly, there aren't too many. I mean, there are some things that people believe. First of all, let's start with the ones that exist that are real. If you are pregnant or breastfeeding, you should not be fasting. Ideally, women who want to get pregnant would be well served to fast before getting pregnant. But once pregnant, the detoxification is so rapid and because what's in your blood feeds your baby, if you're detoxifying, you're going to affect the baby, the fetus, with the detoxification process. So I don't recommend someone pregnant fasting or breastfeeding. Same thing. If you're breastfeeding, you wind up affecting the quality of your milk through fasting. So it would be better to get this done beforehand. Now, if you're already pregnant or breastfeeding and you're hearing this, then my recommendation would be don't fast now, but optimize your diet. Yes, there'll be some detoxification, but it's much better than the toxification that happens every time you're eating conventionally. So for your benefit and for your baby's benefit, whether you're pregnant or breastfeeding, it's always okay to optimize the diet right away, as soon as you possibly can. It's going to be better for both of you. It might be a little bit uncomfortable at first, but you're both going to be much better off in the long run that way. Other than that, I mean, people say, well, if you have severe liver or kidney disease, fasting isn't a good idea. We've seen people heal with both liver and kidney disease. And in fact, I'll share a cautionary tale, if I may. We talked before about the importance of having guidance. So about 4 years ago, I fasted a young man. He was in law school in the Netherlands, a very sharp guy. He played competitive tennis, but he wasn't feeling so good. He was a bit depressed, and he was overweight, and he wasn't at his best. And so he fasted with me for 21 days. It was a life-changing experience for him. And he came back about a year later and said, I want to fast again remotely, from his home. And by the way, for people who can't get to Tanglewood, which I think by far, if you can get there, that's the way to do it. But there may be people listening to this for whom the travel cost is prohibitive, or the cost of staying with us. And we have 18 full-time staff members, part-time staff members. I have a team of volunteers that I house and feed. It's expensive to run the center. And so I also work with people remotely. I do group calls every day with people who are fasting with me from wherever they are, all over the world. Right now, I've got clients on 4 continents fasting with me. And so that's another option. And that's what he did. He wanted to fast with me remotely. Just before we were going to start, he said to me, I disagree with you about how much water we need to drink. And so I want to do it again. This time I want to just drink when I'm thirsty. He said, I hope that's okay with you. I said, it's definitely not okay with me. If you're not going to take coaching around how much water you drink, I can't help you, because you're going to get in trouble. And so he went off. He said, okay. And he fasted on his own without my guidance. He wound up in the hospital with 3% kidney function because he was severely dehydrated. And as you know, Ed, we've been measuring people's hydration levels now for 18 years. We've measured more than 6,000 people's hydration. Virtually everybody is severely dehydrated. And so people normally drink when they're thirsty, but that doesn't work. That has everyone dehydrated. You actually need someone who understands how much water you should be drinking and how to properly interpret your vital signs to see what that is in order to make sure you're getting the right amount, because you don't want to drink too little and you don't want to drink too much. You have to find that sweet spot in that window. So he came back to me. I didn't know about any of this for about a year. Turns out he spent 3 or 4 months in the hospital trying to recovering. He did recover. Ultimately, he was released and he went back to school and back to playing tennis. But he contacted me about a year after he was released and said, "This is what happened." He said, "I'm an idiot. I should have listened to you. And I'd like to fast again with your guidance, if you're willing to guide me through the process." I said, "Yeah." He said, "I promise I'll follow your coaching." So I took him through the process again about a year ago. And a few months after that, he went and had his his kidneys tested, and they told him he was back to 100% kidney function. So, again, doing this on your own, doing it incorrectly, could be very dangerous. There are people that get themselves in real trouble simply because they don't really understand what's happening. But it's critically important to drink the right amount of water. We talked a little bit about that and it's so important. I can't overstate that. But here's an example of somebody with kidney disease who fasted with me, very poor kidney function, and was able to heal completely. We see the same thing with liver. People say, if you've got a liver challenge, you shouldn't be fasting. How better to heal the liver than to rest your body as completely as possible? Yes, your liver and kidneys are doing the bulk of detoxification, so they're going to be working while you're fasting, but they're working all the time. Your 2 kidneys never stop filtering your blood, roughly 60 times per day, every single day of your life. If they ever stop, if they're unable to do that job, you need to be connected to a machine. Your quality of life goes way down, and you won't live very long, right? So they never stop working. When we are fasting and only consuming clean water, as you know, we have perfect spring water bubbling up out of the ground at Tanglewood, which is one of the reasons I bought that site. When we're fasting on only water, they're doing less work than they normally do when we're eating, especially when people are eating the way they're eating, the way they normally eat, and their body has a lot of garbage to outprocess.
That's one cool statement, and also I can give mine statement after the fast is that I love tennis, right? I really love it. It's my favorite sport, and after the fast, I've been playing better than ever. My neurological system and also the issues I had with my back. Even though I have fasted for 24 days and have been a frugivore for 17 years this December, the 39-day water fast, and I had the feeling, I knew it was going to be the next level for my healing process for all the damage that I created for 22 years of a normal lifestyle. And after hearing so much of Herbert Shelton's lecture, and the natural hygiene concept that the longer the fast, the more capacity you have to heal. I think maybe you remember that I was crying for the last days there. The 35 after the 35 day, I started crying, and my jaws were like clenched, like giving noises, and it's for sure it isn't 100% what it should be because of my childhood was so bad, but for sure it has been a lot of what I aimed to heal over there. It got healed a lot more than even the 24 and the 23-day water fast, or even the 17 16 years of eating this way, right? So it's amazing. The longer you go, the longer you regenerate.
In the moments, the minutes before joining you here, I was responding to a message from someone who said, a 55-year-old American who said, okay. He said, I'm ready to sign up. I think I'll come. He was originally going to work with me remotely. He said, I think I'll come to Tanglewood. Great choice. But he said, why would I bet? Because I said to him, yeah, you can do 21 days, but you would definitely benefit from doing longer than that. And he said, why would I benefit from doing more than 21 days, as if 21 days is the best you can do? I personally believe that virtually everybody benefits from fasting up to 30 days. And there are many people who will benefit from going beyond that. You were dealing with long-standing issues that you hadn't been able to heal. That long of a fast allowed your body to do things it hadn't been able to do before. And it may be that everybody benefits from doing, close to 40 days. The thing is, there's also trade-offs. I'm not sure it makes sense for everyone.
Two things is for sure I'm going to do a 40-day water fast again. That's for sure because I'm pretty sure I can heal even more than I healed. I can feel it. And the second thing is that you're right. Now I regret from breaking before the 40-day. I should have gone probably even longer. But I was a little bit scared of losing muscle. I was already feeling like my biceps and uh, my leg muscles as well and my calves, so I was like, a little bit unsure, and over the end you started getting so bored, but even then I regret it and I should have gone a few days longer.
Well, and
But
one of the things I think you can probably attest to, Ed, is that the muscle, your body is so efficient when you're finished that you rebuild muscle much more easily than usual.
for sure. No, all came back. I'm still lifting. I'm lifting a little bit more than I used to. So no worries. It took a while for sure. It took a while, but I didn't lost muscle. I'm weighing more than I used to. So I'm pretty happy. It's just like even for me, right after 16 years back then, 1 year ago of doing this, doing a lot of long water fasts. Even for me, it was like, should I go any longer? And I think, close to the 40-day, it gets so boring. You're like, oh my God, I want to go back to life. But for sure, in that, you were right. Like, I should have gone longer. Maybe it was heal a little bit more, but after all, I'm pretty happy with the decision to fast
Yeah,
for
yeah.
40 days.
Listen. Don't beat yourself up. It was still an incredibly powerful experience for you, and I think this. I mean, I think it's a good point because we every year we'll have people who say, they've planned to do 21 days or 26 days, and then at some point they'll say, okay, this is too hard or it's too boring. I'll stop here. I don't know of anybody who's ever come back to me and said, I'm glad I quit early. It was a good decision. Almost everyone who does says, I wish I hadn't done that.
I know because I felt every fast that I break, I feel like I could have gone longer, but
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
human mind plays tricks with us, right, when we are
Yeah,
fasting. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
it was such a great pleasure to see you again, to hear you again, and to spread our message because I think you share the same goal with me is that a world with natural hygiene medicine being the primary medicine instead of being the third or fourth or fifth would be a better world for us all. So
Yeah, well, I mean, as I think, I do what I do because I want to see everybody feel and function as well as possible. And it's amazing what the average person can do if they're willing to.
yeah, I feel the same. I feel the same. It's hard for people to understand, but we are not. We may make money out of this because it's our work, but we started only because we continue only because we believe so much in this because we live this to our to our hearts, to our souls. So
Exactly. Yeah.
it was a
Ed, pleasure to see you. Yeah.
Thank you. Keep doing, keep rocking, and keep teaching people. The one day we will remember by medicine history as visionaries, as the guys that were pointing people to the right direction. But until then,
Maybe,
we maybe see as quacks for most people, But
that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, for sure. At least we know that we are doing the right thing.
Exactly.
One day people will understand. See you guys
Take
next
care.
Frugal Health Podcast. And don't forget, go watch the full length documentary in Loren and in my channel, 39 Day Waterfest. See you then.